Alright guys, so this could potentially be the best watch on AliExpress to date, and what makes it even better is that it's not an homage, it's actually an original design, and there's some really interesting stuff going on with this one. Some really nice attention to detail, which we'll get into as we get into the review. So this is what you'll get in the package. Not just the watch, you also get 2 extra straps as well included, which is a really nice touch. And depending on which dial you go for, you'll get a colour matched one as well, with the rubber one at least. So this is only the second watch that I've actually reviewed from IXDAO. The previous one being this one down here, and some of my other favourites that I've got next to them as well. If you haven't seen them, I'll leave a link to that up in the top, and also down in the description as well. So we've actually got a few different options in terms of dials with this as well, not just colours, actual designs. So I'll get all this out of the way, and then we'll get into that. I'll show you the one I've got first, and then also talk about briefly the other ones that you can get as well. So the one I've got here is the green, what they call dragon scale. So you can see it's got that really interesting dial design. But if you're not keen on this, they do also do a different one as well, which they're calling a wave dial. So I'll show you an example of that. So with this one, they're calling this the coffee. They also do it in green and blue. And with the dragon scale one, that's only available in green or blue. There is actually one other big design difference between the 2 different dial options, but we'll get into that a bit later on. Before we do, first of all, let's go over the dimensions. So we've got a diameter of 39.5, thickness of 12.1. Lug width is coming in at 20. Despite the listing saying it's actually 22, it isn't. I have actually measured it, it's 20. Then when it comes to the lug to lug, that's coming in at 44.3. And then in terms of the weight on the supply bracelet, with all the links included, it's coming at 161 grams. And then size for my 7-inch wrist, it's coming at 146. So we'll now take a closer look at that, starting with the clasp. I do like that design on there, with the logo and those stripes. Then if we flick around to the side, we've got no micro adjust there, just a nice polished chamfer, double pushers, and then a nice on-the-fly adjustable clasp. Easy to use. Just push that button in, and then you can slide it back and forth. Good amount of adjustment there. Always really good to see on a watch. Becoming more common as well. Oh, nearly forgot. One of the other best bits of this watch, the case back. So this is absolutely beautiful. So with the dragon scale one, you'll get this really nice dragon embossed on the case back. And then if you go for the wave dial, you'll get this one instead, which I do think looks really good as well, but the dragon is just really cool. So I'm definitely glad I went with this one. And obviously with them being divers, they've both got screw down case backs as well. And then the usual kind of specs around the outside, so 200 meter water resistance, stainless steel, and also sapphire crystal, which we will be testing in a bit. Now moving on to the bracelet itself. And again, this is really nicely done. So we've got a mixture of finishes. So it's brushed on the outside, polished on those centerpieces. And we have actually got screw links as well. Always good to see. And you can see it's really nicely finished. Nice articulation as well. And they are all individual pieces too. But now let's move on to the head of the watch, because there's some interesting stuff going on here as well, as you can probably tell based on what I said earlier. So we'll start with the side. So we've got the nice finish there, fully brushed, just a polished chamfer running along the edge. Got that nice sign crown with the logo. And then we've also got some nice detailing on the edge of that bezel as well. Kind of almost looks like the teeth of a dragon maybe. But now let's move on to the dial, because as I said, that's probably one of the main key design elements with this. And obviously the first thing you notice is that dragon scale on the dial. And depending on the angle it catches the light at, you will notice those little gold details in between the scales more or less. Because it has actually got quite a bit of 3D effect to this dial, and it's really well done. So apparently it's oil pressed as well. So we've got applied indices, printed logo and text with the 200 meter automatic. Then that date window down at the 6, which is definitely my preferred position with that frame around it as well. And it's a nice size, it's not too cramped or anything, so really legible. And then you've probably noticed we have actually got a bit of text down at the bottom, either side of that date window, where it says IXDAO Diver. Personally, I wouldn't have that there, I'd just have it plain. You don't really need it, doesn't really add anything. And the indices are really nicely done, especially that one up at the 12. You can see all the little details they've done with that. And obviously with the high polish finish, it just catches the light and plays with it nicely too. And the same goes for the hands. And then with that second hand, we've actually got a pretty unusual design. And despite it being so thin, they've actually managed to get some lume on there as well, which we'll be checking in a bit. Something else that we've got on this, which you don't always see on AliExpress watches, is the fact that we've got a cap on the second hand, as well as the AR being clear and not having that slight blue tinge that you sometimes get with AliExpress watches. It's just another example of the attention to detail with this watch. And speaking of the crystal, now let's check out if we have actually got sapphire on this or not, using the trusty diamond selector too. And yep, we have got sapphire crystal, so always good to see. So now let's get onto the movement, and you might have already noticed earlier on that it did actually say on the back of the watch what movement is, and if you missed that, it's an NH35. So show you this in action. Unscrew the crown, no issues with that, nice and grippy. Pop it out to the first position, and then we can change that date. Pop it out to the second position, second hand stops, so we got hacking. Change the time, pop it back in, second hand re-engages, all works just fine, hand winding, and again, easy to screw back down as well. Perhaps it would have been nice if we got a Miyota 9000 series movement in here, just so we had that high beat, and maybe they could have made the case slightly thinner, but other than that, it's a rock solid movement. But let me know where you stand on that. Would you prefer the 9000 series movement, or are you fine with the NH35? Now moving on to the bezel, so it's a ceramic bezel, and it's 120 click. Nice clicky action. No back play at all. It's not too tight either, it's just about right. And then when it comes to the alignment, on mine at least, that's bang on, no issues there. So hopefully so far, you'll see why I'm saying this could potentially be the best watch on AliExpress. But the question now is, what is the Lume like? Is that going to keep this streak going, or is it going to let it down? There's only one way to find out, so let's check it out now. So we've got a bit there already, but let's charge it up, give it a proper chance. And there we go. So you can see, we've got plenty of Lume on there. And it's looking really impressive, at least initially. So there's quite a few bits to talk about here. So we've got BGW9, and we've got a lot of it as well. So obviously the hands, the indices, plenty on that bezel, notched on the Lume pip. And then we've also got a little bit on that second hand that I was talking about earlier. But then most importantly, we've actually got it on that date window. That's not something you see very often again. So really nice touch there. And initially at least, it's all looking pretty consistent. There's no patchiness at all. But as always, the question is, what is the longevity like? So let's speed this up now and find out. So to begin with, not a great deal of change. I'm suspecting that date wheel is probably going to fade first, just because they can't really get a lot on there. And then probably that second hand, and maybe the markers in between the numbers on the bezel. But so far, it's all still looking pretty good. Yeah, the bits I've mentioned have faded slightly, but nowhere near as much as I was expecting. And even that date window is still just about visible. So you definitely won't be disappointed with this Lume. It's going to last you all night, no problem whatsoever. And as an added bonus, you've even got a Lume crown as well. Obviously, not all that useful, but it is a cool little touch to have. So you can probably tell I'm pretty smitten with this watch. But it's not perfect, no watch ever is. So let's go over the pros and cons, show you what it's like on wrist, and then you can decide whether you want to pick one of these up or not, and whether you agree with me when I say this is potentially the best watch on AliExpress. And here it is on my 7-inch wrist. So, wears really nicely, and again, with that dial, depending on the lighting, sometimes you don't really notice the scales too much, and because we've got that on-the-fly adjustable clasp, you get the perfect fit, nice articulation with the links, and I really like the design on this clasp as well, with those lines as well as that logo. I just think it ties it together quite nicely. I think it's a really smart looking piece. Yeah, it's a diver, but I think you could probably get away with it being like a more dressier style diver, so you might be able to wear it in other occasions. But let me know if you agree with that, or if I'm talking rubbish. It wears really nicely on wrist as well, with that nice compact lug to lug. Those integrated lugs as well. So, despite it being a fairly flat case, it just sits on your wrist really nicely. Perhaps you might not be able to get away with it though, because of that thickness. It is just over 12mm. Although, I think it wears better than that would suggest. But then this is where a possible issue does come in. Perhaps it would have been nice if they'd used a Miyota 9000 series movement, because then they could have got that case thickness down a bit, and they also would have had a nice smooth sweep high beat movement as well. I think this watch kind of deserves that maybe, but obviously that would bump up the price, so let me know where you stand on that. But that's the only real issue I do have. Perhaps it would have been nice to have a quick release bracelet, because we've got a quick release on the rubber strap. But again, the fact that we're getting 2 extra straps in the packet is a nice bonus. If I'm being really nitpicky, perhaps they could have tried to get some more Lume on that date window, but as I said, it was better than I thought it would be initially, and it did actually last a decent amount of time, so that is a real push. As you can see, I'm kind of struggling to find negatives with this one. The positives definitely outweigh the negatives with this one. You've got that really nice design on the case back with either one you go for. You've got the pretty unique design with the scales or the wave kind of design on the dial. So if you do like this overall design, you should be able to find something you do like as well, with the multiple colour options too. So to answer the question I posed at the beginning of this video, is this the best watch on AliExpress? In my opinion, yes it is. The unique design elements and the build quality, you can't really beat it. Previously I probably would have said that San Martin that I showed you earlier in the watch roll. I think this pips it now. The attention to detail alone and the unique design elements just push it over the edge, I think, despite the movement not being as good as the one in that. And if you haven't seen the video of that San Martin, I'll leave a link to that at the end so you can check that one out, and then you can decide which one you think is better. But that's it for this one guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.